Hilchos Shevuos Perek Shneim Asar. The Laws of Oaths, chapter 12. Today is Rosh Chodesh Adar, Mishanichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha. Even though we've been doing it for a month already, but the second Adar is the one that has Purim in it, so it's even a happier occasion. Today is Rosh Chodesh. The minyan went a little later, so we'll forgive the noise in the background. And today we are concluding the first set of laws in this sixth book of the Rambam. And the topic is basically going to be to always keep in mind the severity of an oath, what it means to swear to use Hashem's name, and why it's so important not to take it lightly. Says the Rambam, Halacha Aleph, Afal pi sheloika hanishba lashav oy lasheker. Even though somebody who swears falsely, a useless oath, a false oath, even though he gets lashes, which means he gets punished, v'chein hanishba shvuas ha'edos or shvuas ha'pikadei mevi karban, or the other categories of oaths, like the person that swears a false oath of testimony, or a false oath of deposit, as we explained in the last couple of chapters, even though he also gets a punishment to bring a sacrifice. And usually in Torah we say that when a person gets punished, that's it. He reverts back to being a regular Jew. We don't look at him any less or any worse because he got punished. The punishment itself is the full atonement for the sin. Nevertheless, says the Rambam over here, when it comes to an oath, ein miskaper lahen avein hashvua kulai. Even after getting lashes or after bringing a sacrifice, you don't get a full atonement for the sin of making a false oath. Shanemar, because it says in the verse of the Aseres HaDibros, the Ten Commandments, what does it say? Don't take Hashem's name in vain. Loi yenake Hashem. Because Hashem will never fully cleanse somebody who takes his name in vain. Which means, ein lo zanikoyen midin shamayim, the person who swore falsely never gets fully cleansed in the hands of heaven, ad sheyispara mimenu al Hashem agadol shechilel, until Hashem takes retribution for the great name that he desecrated. In other words, there's no way you can fully atone for the sin in this world. Hashem needs to take care of you. Shanemar, as it says, that's the next verse here on the screen, v'chilalta Hashem elekecha ani Hashem, that when you swear falsely with Hashem's name, you're basically desecrating his name. There's no atonement for that. Chilul Hashem is something which you can't take back. Let's say the classic sense of it, in the first book of the Rambam describes if you do a sin while people are watching, you can do all the atonement that you want. The bottom line is Hashem's name was desecrated in public. People saw it and you can't walk that back. So here also the Torah calls swearing falsely a chilul Hashem because that's the same level of severity. What you did, you cannot fully take back. You can atone for it, you can follow Torah's punishments, but in the end of the day, there's no full kapara. That's how strict it is. That's how severe it is. Halacha beis avoin zeh min hachamuresu. This sin, the end of Halacha Aleph, lefichach, therefore, tzarich adam lihizar me'avoin zeh yoser mikol ha'averos. A person must be very careful to avoid such a sin more than other sins, because it carries this severe consequence. Avoin zeh min hachamuresu kamesha bi'arnu b'ilchos tshuva. This sin is one of the stricter ones, as we explained in the laws of tshuva. Swearing falsely is really high up there. Afal pisha ein by loy kares v'loy misas beis din. Even though, look at the punishments, you don't get excision, you don't get death by the court. There are many other averos, you get death by the court. But it's not always the punishment that determines how severe the transgression is. Because yesh by chilul Hashem ha-mekudash, shehu gadol mikol ha'aveinos. It involves the desecration of the holy name, which is greater or worse than all sins put together. And therefore, it's high up there on the list of strict averos. Halacha gimel, misha nishba b'shamayim uva'aretz, uva'shemesh v'chayetze bahen. If someone takes an oath by the heaven, or by the earth, or by the sun, or something like that. In other words, instead of saying the classic formulation of an oath, I swear by God's name that's so-and-so, you say, I swear by the heavens that's so-and-so, or by the earth, or by the sun. Even though in your mind, you don't mean to invoke the heavens or the earth themselves. You're having in mind to the Hashem, who created the heaven and earth. Ein zu shvua. It doesn't count as an oath at all, because you use the wrong terminology. V'chein, so too, hanishba benavi min haneviyim. A person swears by one of the prophets, like biksav mikisvei HaKodesh, or one of the holy writings. You say, I swear by the Megillas Esther, by the scroll that's coming up soon, Purim. I swear by the scroll of Esther that X, Y, and Z. Afal pisha ein kavanasai elo lemisha shalach navi zeh. Even though in your mind you mean that you want to swear by Hashem who sent this prophet, or lemisha tziva biksav zeh, or the God that commanded in this writing. Ein zu shvua, doesn't count as an oath. Because, again, you have to only invoke Hashem's name and nothing else. He says that I'm nevertheless, even though, bottom line, it doesn't count as an oath, when you see somebody who does say an oath in this manner, you should threaten them. Teach the people not to treat these matters lightly. The rabbis, the smart rabbis, they have to convince or impress the person as though he made a real oath. And then you open up an opening and release them from the oath. In other words, make them think that it was an actual oath, and you'll get a loophole, you'll get them out of it. So they understand that it wasn't a simple thing, even though you know really that it's not really an oath, but make it look like as if it is, so you impress the importance of this, in general, holding oaths high on people. When do we say that swearing by a holy writing is nothing if it's any of the other books of the Tanakh? But if a person says, I swear by the Torah, the actual 5 books of Moshe Rabbeinu, so then it depends how he formulates his oath. If he says, I swear by what's written in the Torah, then Shacharis. He obviously has in mind Hashem's names in the Torah. And that's like swearing by God's name. But if all the guy says, I swear by the Torah, not by what's written in the Torah, then Daite ala Gvil, he literally means the scroll. The Ein Kan Shevuos, there's no oath, because swearing by the scroll means nothing. Notla biyadai v'nishbaba. Person goes over to the Aron Kodesh, opens it up, takes out the Torah, and says, I swear by the Torah, even though he didn't use the word by what's written in the Torah, but you can tell that he took it out for the express purpose of the oath. That's like swearing by what's written in the Torah, and therefore it's forbidden. The oath is applicable. Now this difference between what's written in the Torah and the Torah scroll, so the Rambam says only Torah sages knew about this difference. And therefore, if you just see somebody saying, I swear by the Torah, if he is a Torah sage, he has no need to go ask a Torah sage to release the oath, because he for sure knows the difference between what's written in the Torah and the Torah scroll. But if it's a regular guy who may not know the difference, and when he says, I swear by the Torah, he may actually mean the Torah writings, we're going to make him go to a sage and release the oath, so it doesn't lead him to behave frivolously with oaths. You should take it seriously. If a slave takes an oath, the master doesn't even have to force him to violate the oath to show that it's nothing. It's actually nothing. After the oath, he's exactly like before the oath. He doesn't own his body that the oath should be applicable. Look at this word here. It says, when it comes to oaths, what does it say? It says, lesser isar al nafshay. The person needs to forbid something on his soul. That means, misha nafshay birshusay. The person needs to have his soul in his own possession. You have to own yourself to be able to make new prohibitions apply to yourself. Yotza eved, this excludes a slave, shu birshus acherim, who is really in somebody else's authority. So the slave, when he swears, it's like swearing on someone else's things. Like, can I go over to you and say, hey, you know what, I swear that you can't have benefit from your car. Kind of a joke. I can't make a shvuah on your stuff. So the slave can't make an oath for himself because that's making an oath for his master's stuff. Halacha zayin ketanim shenishbu. What about a minor? A child under bar bas mitzvah makes an oath, and they know what it means to make an oath. They know that it means serious stuff, invoking Hashem's name. Even though the minors have no obligation to keep their word, we force them to keep the words, to educate them properly, and to threaten them so they understand not to treat oaths lightly. But if the matter about which they took the oath was such a thing, it's a matter which a child couldn't last unless he gets damaged. If you're going to force the kid to keep his oath, he's going to get sick, let's say. Maybe he took an oath to fast or not to eat meat for a long time. It's going to do bad to the kid's health system. So then, obviously we can't force the kid to keep this oath. So first, the father or the teacher should give him a little whack and scream at him. And show him that we released the oath. In other words, make it serious. Make it like, look, really, kid, you should have to fast right now. I'm going to find a way to permit it, so you shouldn't get too habitual in treating oaths frivolously. But the point is, make it look serious. If he can keep it, keep it. Only if he can't keep it because of bodily damage, then we let him get out of it. Halacha ches, talking about kids, we have to be very careful with children. Teach them to always speak the truth without making an oath. You hear kids today always saying, I swear, I swear. Teach them to kind of avoid that. Just say the truth, say the matter the way it is, without that prefix. So they don't become used to swearing too much like the non-Jews have a habit of doing. It's like, basically, it's an obligation on parents and on teachers. It's part of your job as an educator is to teach kids to speak truly without incorporating the word oath or swearing into their lexicon. What if you're present and you listen to a friend mention God's name in vain? Or you watch him swear falsely. You know he's swearing falsely. You just watched someone say God's name with an oath in vain. Or you watched somebody make an unnecessary blessing. In which case a person transgresses the prohibition of taking God's name in vain, as we explained in the laws of blessings. So listen to how severe it is. In times of old, when everyone knew halacha, the person who's listening needs to put the other guy in a ban of excommunication. That's how strict it is. You hear somebody say Hashem's name in vain, and you know they did it purposely for no reason, you have the authority to put them in a ban of excommunication. If you don't do so, you yourself become banned by excommunication. Now you shouldn't put him into a full-on ban. As soon as you put him into the ban, release him right away, so it shouldn't become a stumbling block to others, because no one else knows that you put him into excommunication. In the first book of the Rambam, in the laws of Torah study, we saw at length that when somebody is under a ban of excommunication, it's serious stuff. You can't go into their space, you can't count them for a minyan, many other things. So if you had to do it because he violated God's name in vain, right away undo it, so it won't become a stumbling block for others. If you're going to say that you should let him know, the Rambam says the whole world is going to be in excommunication. Unfortunately, people have gotten into a habit of constantly speaking false oaths. So if you hear somebody do it, privately put him in a ban of excommunication, release him right away. No need to even tell him. When are we talking about, of course? If the guy that was swearing or making the improper blessing, if he was doing it purposely. But if he was inadvertent, he didn't realize that it's forbidden, no need to put him in excommunication. The Rambam says it's even forbidden to put him in excommunication, because Torah never punishes people that are inadvertent. Just warn him that he shouldn't do it again. But if he did it purposely, then you must actually take the next step. Now comes what you asked before. It's not just a useless oath that's forbidden. Just to mention God's name, one of God's unique names, for no reason is forbidden. Even if he didn't swear. Look at this verse. The Torah, in what's called the Teichacha, the rebuke. At the end of the Torah, Moshe gives a long rebuke with curses that are going to befall the Jews if they don't behave. And the way he words it is, he says, if you don't guard the words of the Torah, le'yira es Hashem hanichbad v'hanayra, to fear the honored and awesome name, which means that there's a certain fear you have to have when treating Hashem's name. Ubichlal yirasai shalei yaskiru levatala. Part of awe, part of respect, is not saying his name for no reason. Lefichach, therefore, in ta halashaim v'haitzi shem levatala. A person's tongue made a mistake, and he uttered God's name in vain for no reason. Yemahir miyad v'yishabeach v'yifayer v'yahadle. The way to fix it is right away, say some word that expresses God's praise, glorification, honor. That makes it not be in vain. Ketzad, what does that look like? Amar Hashem, if you say, not Hashem, you say Hashem's actual name, Oimer, right away you should follow up and say, Baruch Hu la'ilam vayed. Blessed is he forever. Oy, Gadol Hu Mehulam ma'id. Great is he, very, very honored. V'chayetze b'zeh, something like that. Today in Shulchan Aruch it says you say, Baruch Shem K'vam Achos Elam vayed. That's the way you should correct it. Kadesh lo yehei levatal, so it shouldn't be for nothing. Which, by the way, many of the commentaries learn from here that even in English, you shouldn't say the word God for no reason. Oh my God, you should convert it to oh my gosh. These kind of things. You should avoid at all costs saying Hashem's name for no reason. Now the Rambam concludes these set of laws with a general perspective on oaths. Even though it's permitted to ask a sage to have your oath released, as we explained at length in chapter 6. And there's actually no problem with it at all. And if somebody doubts the power of the sages to release oaths, it's actually a trace of heresy, because it basically means you don't believe in the oral tradition. Nevertheless, the person on his own should be careful not to just release oaths flippantly. Even the courts shouldn't rush to release an oath unless there's a mitzvah or a pressing need. It's very good for a person not to swear at all. Avoid it completely. If you transgressed, in other words, in the more spiritual, abstract sense, if you didn't follow the ideal mode of behavior, and you swore, it's good for a person to put himself through the pain, stand up to his oath, and keep his word. Shenemar, as it says in Tehillim, there's a whole verse that says, the whole chapter in chapter 15. David HaMelech asks, Hashem, mi agur ba'alecha, who's going to live in your tent, etc., etc. One of the things that brings a person to living in Hashem's tent is nishba lehara v'lo yamir. A person swears to do something bad, and he still doesn't change his word. In other words, even if it hurts, even if it costs, you keep your oath if you did it. The Kasuv Acharav, and at the end of the verse it says, if someone does these types of behavior, he'll never slip ever. Blessed is the merciful and grants his assistance. Mazal tov for completing the laws of Shevuos, the laws of oaths.